my life has honestly been a series of interactions of people who have seen things that I didn't yet see, my younger life at least, I didn't yet see, took that chance and then pushed me to my next greatest thing.
Ooh.
All right. And so I kept, and you know, and I look at it like if I have to put an image, it's like stairs. It's like, whoo, we're going to light us, you know, light a match here or light a torchlight so you can see the next step. And you take that step. And then somebody's on that next step. And we're like, we're going to light a flashlight here so you can see where you're going next. And they kept lighting my way. And, you know, I still had to take the steps, right? I still had to take the steps.
What's happening, y'all? This is Mike D with Black Fathers Now, where we're bringing the village to the brothers. Every couple of weeks, you can look forward to a quick inspirational message or a thought-provoking guest with knowledge and wisdom, all geared towards helping you be the best father that you can be. We're bringing the village to you. Now it's your turn to do something with what you learned. All right, y'all. Let's go. What's going on, fellas? This is Coach Mike D with another episode of Black Fathers Now. And dig this, man, we're going to have a really amazing conversation with a brother. And I'm going to tell you, he and I met a long time ago, but we had lunch recently, and our lunch conversation was just so enriching and invigorating that I was just like, bro, I got to get you on the podcast to share your story, share your journey, and all of that. And the brother that I have today is none other than my man, Lyndon Mitchell. Now, Lyndon is originally from Trinidad, born and raised. Like, he wasn't somebody who just born there and left at 2. Like, he was born and raised, and you'll hear his story a little bit more about how that kind of went down. But he's born and raised in Trinidad. He's currently a school psychologist. He's a husband. He's a father. He went to college in the West Indies. I mean, I don't think I've ever talked to anybody who did undergrad, you know, at the University of the West Indies. I mean, it was really, really dope. But the brother has some really unique perspectives due to his upbringing with regard to community and education and what they have going on. He and his family now is really interesting as well. So we'll chat about that. But brothers and ladies listening to, I want to welcome you to my friend, my man, Lyndon Mitchell. What's up, brother?
Not much. What's going on, Coach Mike?
I love it, man. No, man, dude, I'm good, man. I'm glad you took some time out of your duties to holler at us and share your story and basically allow the world to peek in on some of the conversations that you and I have. So, thank you for sharing with us today, brother.
Absolutely. I look forward to continuing our dialogue here, man.
It's
always great. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and guess what? We're just getting started. So don't get it twisted. You and I, even after the recording of this, we connected, brother. So yeah, we'll keep that going. But before we jump into your story, I always have the brothers do shout outs, because who are we without the wind beneath our wings? Who are we without our support system? Give some shout outs and then we'll jump into your journey, my brother.
Yeah, I mean, whoo, man, how long you got for shout outs? I mean,
however long you need is what we got. You dig?
Oh no, man. When I think of where I am, and as you said, who I am, I mean the list is extensive. So all the way back to Trinidad, my entire family, my deceased grandparents, grandmother, grandfather, I mean, who spirit continues to be with me and guide me. So I know they're here and they are here. They are present in this conversation right now too. So, shout out to you all. Mm-hmm. To like everyone who has taken a chance on me. Mm-hmm. When I didn't even realize that I was deserving of a chance, so to all the people who saw what I didn't yet see and decided to say, hey, you know what, we're going to take a chance on you. And so that list is extensive. People who gave me my first jobs when I didn't have the criteria or the qualifications for it. People who decided, it's like, you know what, you'll be a great grad student. How about you apply? So, doctor over at UCLA, Dr. Frank Worrell, who was a school psychologist who I met, that guided me down on this path of school psychology, So those moments with people who just came into your life for that one moment and saw something you didn't yet see, and they fed into you. That led me to who I am. So yeah, to all of those people.
Dude, you said something, and I just mentioned before we got started, I had to take the dog out because he had to go to the bathroom. And so I'm gonna have to take him out again because he's scratching on the door. We have an almost 17-year-old dog, so he's got an old man bladder. But anyway, one of the things that I want to put a pin in, and I'm gonna pause and we'll come back in a second to that, is those who decided to take a chance on me. Like that to me just resonated. When you said that, I lit up and I wrote it down. I was like, wow, those who decided to take a chance on me. We're going to dive into that in the midst of jumping through your story, but I got to take a quick break and take this dog outside before he pees on the floor. And so I'm gonna hit pause and then we'll restart in just a second.
Absolutely.
Okay? All right. Okay, so now I'm back. I had to take a quick detour to let the dog go outside and drain the main vein. But before I stepped away, I mentioned a quote or mentioned a statement that you made in the midst of your shout outs. And you said, those who decided to take a chance on me. And I want us to really think through that. And I guess as you go through your journey, I want to kind of revisit those that decided to take a chance on me as you kind of take us through your story. So take us back, man. Born and raised in Trinidad. Talk to us.
Yeah. So, I was born into a huge family back in the late 70s in Trinidad and Tobago. I always have to give a shout out to Sister Island, Tobago, so they don't feel left out with Trinidad and Tobago. And I, again, grew up in a large extended family within what I like to call a compound. So, my grandfather, who was originally from a smaller island, Grenada, both my grandparents actually, built, this family structure to really house the majority of his kids. So, upstairs, I lived with my mom and my grandparents. And I had an uncle and his family downstairs on one side, an aunt and her family on one side, and another uncle somewhere in the middle. And so we all lived in this huge compound. And so, when I talk family and, people ask, it's like, yeah, your family's still there? I'm like, my family is all over the place because my family, I've always known to be aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents. That's my family, period. But I was the only child for my mother. My mom and my dad, they weren't married. My dad, I probably saw him once a year or occasionally, as I needed certain things, a pair of sneakers, or you're like, hey dad, you could send some money, that I had that family pouring into me, that big, loving, warm, and I'm gonna say strict, traumatized, hurt body around me. And so I got a little bit of all of those things, right? So you got the beauty, and then you also got some of the pain. And so, and that's kind of like my early life, growing up in that setting. And even when my mom and I moved into our own house, it was literally four doors down from where my grandparents lived.
Wow.
My grandmother probably did the bulk of like the after school care. So, I finished school, my mom was working, come home, my grandmother was always there with a hot meal and, and just, there to make sure I did homework and, not run with the bad kids outside in the streets, and so that kind of was, my earliest upbringing. Went to school there all the way through secondary school. I was a great elementary school student, not so great secondary school student.
Secondary is the equivalent to high school here, right?
It's middle and high school. So we just have like two levels. So we don't do elementary, middle, high. We go elementary and then high. It's kind of
so like primary, secondary, right?
Primary, secondary.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So we just do two levels, 1, 2.
And question, is it compulsory? Meaning, is it a requirement for all students or all kids to go through primary and secondary, or is it optional, or is it like in some countries? I know that it's not compulsory, and also parents have to pay like school fees and uniforms and stuff. how is it educationally structured in Trinidad?
Yeah, so yeah, it is compulsory education. You must complete at least up to age 16 in Trinidad. And it's, and education there it's state run. And so, there are persons who choose to pay for private schools. But there are, that's a personal choice, but there are a number of schools. You have government-run schools, you have private schools, you have schools that are also run by church boards, church bodies, but they're also free. So it's not you don't pay for it, kind of thing.
Okay, awesome. And so you did primary and secondary school there in Trinidad, but you also grew up in this compound with an extended family. You had your village basically in-house. And you mentioned how it's funny because as you were talking, I thought about gumbo, right? So like in New Orleans, one of the dishes that you hear about is gumbo. You have all these different ingredients mixed in and it sits there and it simmers for hours and hours and the flavors meld together. And it's interesting as you think about gumbo, if you eat like a clove of garlic by itself, it's probably not too good, but that garlic mashed and mixed into that gumbo, it's like, oh, that makes it amazing altogether. And I think about the concept because you also mentioned something about like all the traumas and the experiences and the nurturing and the love and the discipline and the examples and all of these things are like different ingredients. But because you all were in this compound, this basically this intense village setting, so to speak, because y'all are so close, it was almost like you had this gumbo of all of this stuff all together, mixing all together. But ultimately, because of all those components, you have this amazing bite of food. You know what I'm saying? Like it's as you were talking, I was thinking about gumbo. I don't know why, maybe I'm hungry, but but it made me think about that because like I grew up with grandparents in the vicinity, but I didn't grow up with like my grandparents on the same property. I grew up with uncles and aunts and cousins in the vicinity in the city, but I didn't grow up with uncles, aunts, and cousins on the same property. And so yes, we spent time together, we spent the night and did this and did that, but it was not as intense as everybody living in the same building. Right. You know what I'm saying? It's just interesting just to think about that.
I like your analogy of, that long simmer with gumbo before you can get to enjoy it, because I feel in some respects, that's kind of what's the same thing. It's like in the moment while, it's simmering, it's like, gosh, I need to get out of here, man.
Think about this. Think about this. As you're talking, it's so funny. You said the long simmer, right? So before the ingredients fully cook, break down, and mix in with everything else, they're not too palatable. Each individual. So if you were to take each individual component and try to taste it, if only been in the gumbo for 20 or 30 minutes, you're like, oh, this ain't too good, right? And I could kind of align that with different components of your family. We only spent a little bit of time together. It's like, okay, all right, Uncle so-and-so, all right, fam. Like, I can only take, but over time, when you get to understand their nuances and understand their personality and understand their quirks and good, bad, ugly, whatever, all the things about them, then it's like, okay, I can now better accept and understand Uncle so-and-so because we've been in this gumbo for a while now. Oh, as you were talking, it made me think. I'm sorry.
I mean, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. It's like, I mean, I think I appreciate my entire family so much more now within the past 20 or so, 15, 20 years than I did when I was in it, because, you're in it. You're in that slow boil and you're like, gosh, it's, why is this uncle like this? Why is this aunt always on my case? Why is my grandfather so strict? You're just in there. And some of the things, I always say my grandfather, wonderful man. I named my oldest son, his middle name after my grandfather because he just wonderful, wise man. But I mean, honestly, my grandfather had his own traumas as a kid that made him leave Grenada when he was a teenager, leave his family and, just move to a different island altogether, start over. And, a lot of us, we still don't know all that he went through, but, it showed up and manifested in some of his parenting with his kids and how they also parented. And so, that's why I said it's a mixed bag. It's one of
Yes.
those things where you've got the community, that built-in community, which is wonderful and supportive and nurturing and protective, and you never went hungry, and yet there was still, this other piece to that.
And that's that. But the thing is, I think that's human nature, right?
Yes.
That's who we are. We're complex. I don't like complicated, but I like to understand the complexity and the layers, because we're all complex and we're all layered, but we make ourselves complicated at times by adding more into the mix that needs to be there, right? And the complexity is that's just the nature of our experiences, because we have this amalgamation of all these different experiences, all these different things that happen, and dynamics and environments and whatever, and that comes together to give us who we are. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And that brings its own challenges, but then it also brings its own strengths. And so so just it's interesting just to hear individuals articulate that about their own experience, and then come to the point in which we recognize that, because for some there's a level of shame. You know what I'm saying? Like when we're connected to, or maybe we are, challenged in a capacity of life, there's a level of shame associated with it, because we don't look at the full totality of it, right? We just look at that one thing or that one action or that one circumstance, and we build everything on that. On the flip side, there's the other part to it. And I see this, especially for some of us that, with grandparents who we revere or parents who we revere, we almost turn them into deities, right? Where it gets to a point in which we're almost worshiping our grandparents and great grandparents and ancestors and parents as if they were perfect, only to find out later that, man, great grandmama had some issues too, right? But we tell ourselves these stories, and we're not telling ourselves the full story, the complex story, not the complicated, but the complexity of their experience. And I think we do a disservice to their legacy, but we also do a disservice to the stories that we tell our children about them if we don't look at the full story.
I love that, man. I love that. That I 100% agree with you there. I think it is also really useful and helpful for us to think of our family, our parents, our grandparents in those complex ways, as a way of understanding and being with our own complex nature ourselves, right? Because we're not all anything. We're not all good. We're not all bad. We are just as complex. And sometimes in that search for perfection, or we want to be the best, or we want to be perfect, or because we create these stories and these narratives about, oh, well, this person was all this, or this person, or even this idea of, lionizing some of our superstars, and we see them as one thing, and I think that really robs us of an opportunity to be okay with ourselves as complex beings, and to sit with our good and our bad, and recognize both of those as existing within us, and giving ourselves the opportunity to release some of the shame and do the work, right? Do the work that we need to do to really be whole people.
Man, dude, you're so speaking my language. In one of the trainings that I do an example about the puzzle pieces, where, with regard to the size of the group, it doesn't really matter. I pass out pieces to a puzzle to everybody in the room. And one of the things I ask everybody to do is take a look at your puzzle. It's a 5 pieces to a 500 piece puzzle. And everybody takes a look at the piece that they have. And I ask them to look at that one piece, and everybody on a piece of paper, write down what you think the image becomes just off of looking at your one piece alone, right? So you have to figure out what you think this 500 piece puzzle becomes by just looking at this one piece, right? Then next, I'm like, okay, now get in groups. So you all take a few pieces, put those together, and try to figure out what this image becomes by sharing the pieces with each other. And then we go around the room and everybody guesses, and, oh, I think it's this, I think it's that. Okay, as a group, what did you all think it was? Oh, we thought it was this, we thought it was that. And I've probably done this dozens of times, right? I've never had one individual or one group be able to effectively define what the actual picture becomes, the full picture. They might get pieces of the picture, but the full picture, nobody's been able to do that with the limited information of just one puzzle piece. They weren't even able to do that working in groups with a few puzzle pieces, right? Because there was a whole lot missing. And the whole concept is this: your puzzle, if you look at yourself as a 500-piece puzzle, your puzzle is not defined by any one piece. But then the flip side of that is incomplete without all of the pieces. You know, and so that's so when we start thinking about our lives through the lens of this complex jigsaw puzzle, where we got pieces that are shiny that we want the world to see. We want them to know I graduated from this university and I live in this neighborhood and I drive this car and I got this award and that award. We want the world to see these pieces. This is what we put out front, right? Because this is what we want to be defined as. On the flip side, we got some pieces that are jagged that we're hiding at the very bottom, that we have in our closet, that we pray to God nobody finds out about. That conversation we had with somebody 5 years ago that only they know what went down. We just like, look, how much do I need to pay you to keep that under wraps? Like, full transparency, we all have something where we're just like, Lord, like I don't want to leave with that piece, right? But the reality is, good, bad, or indifferent, we are not defined by any one singular piece, but our story is incomplete without all the pieces. So it's like, and to me, that's when I think about grace, and I think it kind of leads to that. And it's basically in alignment with what you were mentioning with regard to our parents and our ancestors. It's like, we have to look at them as these complex individuals with all these pieces that we can't define them by just one, but we also got to realize they're incomplete without all.
I love that. I have nothing more to add to that. That was perfect.
Well. So, but now let's jump more into your story. So you did primary and secondary school. So that was pretty much through high school in Trinidad. Yeah. And so then what happened next? Well, also you spoke before. You said also during that time frame, didn't you had some changes with your parents? Didn't you lost your parents?
So my dad died when I was 11. And again, that we didn't live together. Although by the time that I turned 10, 11, I was becoming more of, it's like, okay, I need to connect with my dad here. There are some things that father and the son, we need to be talking about that my mom and I, we just couldn't, right? Okay. And I didn't understand at that time. My mom was like, no, that's not a good idea. You're not going to. And she, again, I grew up in the 80s too. There wasn't a whole lot of explanation why. So absolutely. Like, no, you're not.
Because when I said no is what it is.
You're not going to live with him. And there was some resentment there because, again, I'm not knowing, and I want to connect with my dad at this point. But yeah, he died actually tragically. He committed suicide when I was 11 years old. Wow. Yeah. And so that too creates for me at least, it created a sense of, so there's this initial loss of not having had a consistent, this other loss on top of that, which was kind of like, him taking his own life. And so for a period there, I was kind of like, dang, okay, how unworthy am I? It's like, first you didn't want to be in my life, and then you really said you didn't want to be in my life because you're just going to kill yourself, right? And again, part of that is that childish ego, like, well, this is about me, not knowing that, he probably had his own issues, his own struggles and challenges as well, but that stays with you. Yes. And so, fast forward, I went through high school and whatever it is. And then 18, my mom died actually. Wow. From cancer. After, and it was a quick, like less than 6 months, maybe, from when she was diagnosed to when she died, Christmas morning, actually. And so, that was 18. And so I always say those kind of really, if I look at my life, if I were to say I'm writing a novel or a book about my life, those were pivotal moments and chapters that were like turning points, for me. So, after my mom died at 18, I was kind of like, I need to do something different. I need a change. I need to go somewhere where I can start afresh. Nobody knows my story, because it was still painful to truly talk and tell my story about my dad committing suicide, and then my mom, who I didn't have the best relationship with, especially in those teenage years, absolutely. And it wasn't the best. And then, she dies when I'm 18. And I have no brothers or sisters. So again, that extended family, they pulled in and they pulled me in. And that was my saving grace. Like my grandmother, who at that point took up full mantle, and it's like, okay, you're my son. Like, she's like, you're my son. You're like, I have 8 biological kids, and now you're not my
Number 9.
grandson, you're my son. And so she, you know, when they start talking and she's calling everybody's name, she would put me there with her kids. You know, it's kind of like, you know, so yeah, she took up the mantle. And then, you know, when I decided to do, you know, undergrad, I was like, I want to get away from here for a little bit, from Trinidad. You know, I want to go to a different country. And I looked at Jamaica, and I was like, I'm going to go to Jamaica, University of West Indies over there. You know, and I mean, it was costly. You got to take out loans. And I had an aunt who you know, was like, okay, I'm going to secure this loan for you. And, you know, my grandmother with her little monthly pension would send a little something every month, you know, just to make sure I get by. And it was hard, but that's how, you know, like my family, they just kind of wrapped around. It's like, boy, you're going to go to college, you're going to get a degree, and whatever we need to do, that's going to happen.
Wow.
So
I mean, it's the village. I mean, when you stop and you think about it, and it's interesting how in our society here in America, it is very much hyper focused on the nuclear family, right? Mom, dad, the kids, and it's that, and then everybody else. Whereas you grew up in this compound where it was the village was in essence your nuclear family. And so that again adds different dynamics with regard to personalities and everybody's input and all of that. So it makes it a little more to manage. We you know, can understand that. But on the flip side, in the face of tragedy, it actually makes it more stable because you have this community, you have this village that's attached to your situation. You know, like when you lost, you know, both of your parents at a young age.
Yeah, and you know what? And I want to even show, you know, when you tell me at the beginning to shout out, there are some other people too that were not even in my family. Like, so one of my mom's best friends, who she worked with, continues up to this day to be one of, you know, checking on me. And she would call. She would be like, "You doing all right?" You know, she became, and she said, you know, like, "I'm your second mother." And I, you know, and initially it was a kind of rub. I'm like, "No, you're not my mom." You know, she's like, "No, I'm your second mother." And she didn't have to, you know, do anything. You know, she would send me money when I was in Jamaica. She'd be like, you know, "Are you doing all right?" I'm like, you know, I ain't got no money to buy food. And she'd be like, "I'm sending you a little something," you know. Again, no, she didn't have to. This was not her charge. She had her own family and kids, but because of her relationship with my mom and that closeness, she was like, "No, I'm extending that same kind of love to you too. I'm going to ensure that you're taken care of, you know, in the absence." So yes, my family was great, but there were also people outside. That's why I was like, who didn't have to. They didn't have to, but they saw it as like, "Hey, you know what? You are part of this wider family that we have, and we want you to be part of it, and we're going to invest in you, even though we don't have to." And yeah,
dude, I'm gonna throw something. This is interesting. So I interviewed a brother a couple years back he was out of Toronto, and his family, ironically, is from Jamaica originally, but his name is Dr. Vibe. And we were talking in our conversation, and he had on a shirt that talked about community. And this was right around the time in which I was using the term, you know, your network is your net worth, you know, statement, right? Your network is your net worth. And he challenged me. And from this point, I really have flipped my verbiage to really reflect this. It's not about your network, it's about your community. And he said, the thing is, and this is what was so powerful about it, your network is something that you're connected to, that you tap into and you tap out of as you need, right? As you see fit. I'm connected to you. I can, you know, tap in, tap out if I need it. Your community is something that you're vested in, something that you feel responsible for, right? Something that you're committed to, something that, you know, you're committed to that collective success. And so to your point, the village is more symbiotic, or it's like a symbiotic relationship with being a community more so than a network. And so to me, a network is just this thing that we're taught because of the individualized focus. To me, community is like, no. Like you mentioned, your mom's friend or other coworkers and people around, they were a part of your community. They were a part of your village. So it was not that they didn't have to, they actually felt a sense of responsibility to, because of the value and the belonging to this community. Had it just been a network, then yeah, maybe they do. Maybe they shoot you a couple of dollars here or there. No obligation. As a part of the community, it is an obligation.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's interesting. Like I've had to really rechange or reshape my perspective on, again, network versus community. And so I slip up every so often and still say network, but the whole goal is community or village building, not network building, right? It's not networking, dude. I'm building relationships because, again, I want something in which is mutually beneficial, but then I feel a sense of responsibility to at least ensure the success of, or at least adding value to the success of, right? Like that's just what I feel in my core.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm 110% there with you too about that relationship between the individual and the community, and how, the community supports and is responsible for. So it's not, and I like how you framed it. It's not that they had to. It's like they feel that's part of their responsibility as someone, as a community member, that this is part of our responsibility. You are part of our responsibility. So we're going to look out to you, and how, they're kind of responsible for that. But then also how the individual, and that'll be me, in turn, feeds back into the community. So how am I now, based on everything that has been fed into me, feed back out and bless someone else, and that's kind of how I kind of live my life too. Because I say, if it weren't for the shoulders and the arms and the love and the prayer and the sweat and all of that from a whole bunch of people, I wouldn't be who I am. All right. I am, and that whole I am because we are, it's so true for me. And that because it's like, I am because there were people before me, around me, who created I am. I have a responsibility too. I have a responsibility to ensure that my community, and when I say my community, because again, that I grew up where community wasn't just mother, father, brother, sister. It's a wider net. It's my responsibility to my community, a wider cross-section of people, to look out for them. And it is my responsibility that they are also okay, and to pour into them as well.
I love it. Man, look, like ladies and gentlemen, like I said before, we had these conversations. I just wanted you all to get a snippet of what we talk about and be able to peer into this, because this is some really rich stuff, and it's rooted in the experiences that we've had. Right. And so this is really, really dope. And so, again, you went to college, undergrad at the University of the West Indies in Jamaica, but you also did not go straight to college. Like, you spent a couple of years between secondary school and college, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I spent about 3 years because I didn't have the grades to go to college right away. As I said, I wasn't the best secondary school student. So I didn't have the grades, and quite frankly, I didn't have the money either, so it was kind of, so I didn't know what I wanted to do. At the time, you go through school and they're like, you have your friends, oh, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a lawyer. And I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what the hell I'm going to do. Yeah. and quite honestly, I don't have the money to just go, do a year at university and figure it out. Right. So I, worked for 3 years after high school and before I began my undergrad, and, did a couple jobs in government, and coming back to this idea of, that extended family and extended community, it was my mom's friend, the same one, who was able to get me a job at the bank, as a customer service representative. She knew someone in there, and she was like, hey, let me tell this person you're a really good kid and see if they'll give you a shot. And I was like, I don't know nothing about finance. Math was like, I barely passed math in school. I'm like, all right, sure, take a chance on me. And I was able to get a job at the bank, which was great, because there I was able to, earn some money, some savings, was able to secure some loans to, help, with my future study. And also when I came back, like during vacations, they were like, hey, do you want to work with us for a couple months, while you're on vacation, so you could earn some money when you go back to study. And so that one event of her just saying, hey, let me just hook this up for you, open this door and see what happens, created these opportunities. And so, I worked for a little bit there. Then I went on, did my undergrad for 3 years, got my bachelor's in psychology in Jamaica. Then moved back to Trinidad after that. Because again, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was like, all right, I have this bachelor's in psychology. What do you do with that? And in Trinidad, we still had this and that was early 2000, like late 90s, early 2000s, there was still this idea of like, psychology, really? People,
what you gonna do with that?
People don't come and sit down and talk about their problems here. Go get a drink by the bar or do something, man. Somebody gonna sit down and talk to you about problems. But I got back to Trinidad and I ended up working for an NGO at that point. And how I got in there, I just started by saying, hey, I want to take some classes, just learn about substance abuse and domestic violence kind of support kind of thing. And so I took some classes with them and they were like, hey, how would you like to, facilitate some sessions and do some stuff for us? And I'm like, sure. And, I just started part-time with them doing some stuff. And then after a while, they're like, okay, we want you on full-time. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I'm not married. I don't know anybody in my family with substance issues. I don't know if I could speak to this. What are you all calling me in here for? They're like, no, man, you got something. And we want to get you in here and pour some in, invest in you a little bit and see where it goes. And it worked out great. I mean, it opened up my mind. I moved from the employee assistance program part of it, which was more of that substance abuse and supporting adults, into the youth education component of it. And that was working with, secondary school students to develop like peer competency skills. So how going in and training secondary school students to be peer facilitators and peer counselors kind of thing. And that's kind of what I did for like 2 years. I was a coordinator for that project. And that led into like, oh man, okay, schools, let me look into schools and what's going on here. And that led me into meeting this guy from UCLA who introduced me to school psychology. And that led right into me going into doing my master's in school psychology after that.
It's interesting. Again, it's funny how, I don't come up with a script, right? Like I just basically have a framework of just, hey, introduce yourself, shout outs, and let's just kind of run through your story. But in the midst of your shout outs, you mentioned those who decided to take a chance on me, right? And then you just mentioned the bank, those who decided to take a chance on me. Then you mentioned at college, those who decided to take a chance on me. Then after college, this job working with substance abuse and domestic violence, you didn't have any background or framework of that. Those who decided to take a chance on me, right? Then you got exposed to child psychology through the professor at UCLA, those who decided to take a chance on me. It's this interesting phenomenon, this interesting theme that comes back to the core of who you are and the core of your experiences. And it's those who decided to take a chance on me.
Yeah. Let me tell you something. And this might be going against a lot of popular, belief in terms you need to have this long-term plan for your life and set all these things. I did not. For a long time, I just was like, I don't know what my next step's going to be. I'm just going to see. And there was always someone along the way who saw something that I didn't quite yet see in me. and so, it was there. It's not that it wasn't there in me. It's just, I didn't see it as yet. And so they just had to take that opportunity to shine a light and be like, hey, let me just shine this light on you so you can see what we're seeing. And give me that opportunity. And that kind of just directed my next step. And then that directed my next step. So I never really set out from a young age with this long-term plan of all these things I wanted to be and do and stuff. My life has honestly been a series of interactions of people who have seen things that I didn't yet see, my younger life at least, I didn't yet see, took that chance and then pushed me to my next greatest thing. All right. And so I kept, and I look at it like, if I have to put an image, it's like stairs. It's like, we're going to light light a match here or light a torchlight so you can see the next step. And you take that step. And then somebody's on that next step. And we're like, we're going to light a flashlight here so you can see where you're going next. And they kept lighting my way. And, I still had to take the steps, right? I still had to take the steps, but I wasn't stepping in darkness. All right. There was always someone there to kind of light it for me. Give me some guidance and light it.
Dude, I'm going to tell you what's interesting about that. Again, I think you and I offline have spoken about The Alchemist, the book by Paulo Coelho. And the whole theme behind The Alchemist is as you pursue your personal legend, the universe conspires to help you along on your journey. Right. Yes. And but the whole concept there is you have to pursue, like you have to be in pursuit of this direction. And to your point, it doesn't mean that you have to be in pursuit of a specific goal, but you just have to know that I need to be walking in this direction. And if you listen and you're obedient to that thing inside of you that's saying, walk in this direction, and you trust that walking in this direction, I'm going to be okay, then that's when, as you start walking down the path, somebody jumps out in the path and says, hey man, you ever thought about this? Come over here real quick. Like, whoa, hold up. And then you start walking the path. Hey man, you ever thought about this? Come over here. Like, start walking down the path. Like, hey, I know somebody who knows somebody. I'll give them a call. Start walking the path. And so it's that whole premise of having the faith to just walk in the direction. And sometimes you don't even know what direction you're walking in, but I just know. Like, and it was interesting. I liken it to the fact that most of us know what to do in a lot of instances and circumstances. Very few of us have the discipline to actually do it, right? And so when I say most of us know what to do, sometimes what to do is I just feel led to just go outside and start walking. Like, and we feel that. It's like something inside of you says, Mike, go outside and start walking up the hill. Just like, I don't know why I feel led to go walk up the hill, but I go and start walking up the hill. And that's when the thing happens, right? But that thing inside of you starts telling you, hey, you know what, just pick the phone up and call your buddy. You know what I'm saying? It's like, why, man, I just talked to him yesterday. Pick the phone up and call your buddy. All right, fine. And then you're just like, oh, so that's why you wanted me to call my friend. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, to me, it's not always about this 30-year, 40-year plan. Like, a lot of times these long-term plans that people have set up are not for you. It's to make those around you comfortable, right? So it's for if you're a kid listening to this, it's so that your parents are comfortable that you're on the right track. Your parents want to hear, I want to be a doctor when I grow up, and I plan to go to university here and medical school here. And 30 years from now, I'm going to have my own practice and be, that's just to make your parents feel comfortable, right? Even though in your mind, you're just saying that to make them feel comfortable. But in reality, you're like, I ain't got this shit figured out yet.
Right.
And it's okay to understand that. So that's why, like, I celebrate you for saying that. As a person you're a school psychologist, as a person who, as you're talking a little bit, you and your family are about to go on an amazing adventure for, almost a year or whatever. This is good for parents to hear, but it's also good for us as adults to hear that we don't have to have all the steps. We don't have to have it all figured out. We don't have to know what's coming next to have the faith to take the step. Just take the step.
Yeah.
Just take the step.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree with you there. I think what happens a lot of times, and I see this too, is, you have that voice that inner thing telling you, this is the right thing. Go do this, take this step, do this thing. But then there's also, in those movies where you have the angel on one side and the devil on the next side.
100%. Yeah.
But you have that other doubt that says you're not good enough for that next step. Or, man, maybe you're too much of a bother, you're a hassle. And so there's always something that's also telling you why you shouldn't be doing it, right? And so you're constantly in that conflict of, well, I want to do this thing, but I don't know if I should. And you spend so much time, in that space of contemplating that you sometimes, never do what you're intending to do. And my thing is just take the step, and not everyone. And I could say that, now, but that may not have been me 20 years ago, right?
100%. 100%.
Definitely not me about 15, 20 years ago. It's like, I was that person. I was like, I'm not sure. But taking the step doesn't necessarily guarantee that step you take is going to be the immediate, key that opens the door. It may be a wrong step, but at least by taking that step, you learn
you learned that it was wrong.
You learned that it was wrong. And you absolutely are able at that point to, take a different course, do whatever next, but go forward, keep moving forward, that idea of, by all means, keep moving. Don't, if you can walk, if you can run, if you can fly, but by all means, keep moving. Yeah.
I think it's obedience, man. Like, it's interesting because as you were talking, I was thinking, you mentioned keep moving. The other part to that is there are times in which you're supposed to stop, right? You're supposed to sit. You're supposed to rest. And this is a time for rest. Like, every major sport has an off season, right? For a reason. Your body's supposed to rest at some point. And so it's interesting that you say that, because I've been, ruminating. I ruminate on a lot of stuff, but one of the things I've been thinking about was just the whole concept of just obedience, right? It's really about being obedient to what that thing is that's telling you to do. So if the thing inside of you saying, Mike, just sit. It's okay. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to stay busy. It's nothing to accomplish right now. Just sit and have peace. Dude, I've had situations like that in which more got accomplished by me sitting my butt down and doing nothing than me trying to stay busy from the time I got up to the time I went to sleep. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's been times in which, from a productivity perspective, more got done with me doing nothing. But the message that was coming to me was, Mike, you just need to sit right now. And it's just like, But then there are other times in which, man, from 5 a.m. till midnight, we're getting it. And that's the message for that day. You know what I'm saying? But it's in the moment. Like, are you listening to and are you obedient to that thing that's telling you? Like, for me, from a spiritual perspective, it's the Holy Spirit. That's the way that I rock from my belief structure. But it's just like, I think that's something we have to be very mindful of. It's like, are you obedient to what that thing is telling you to do?
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, and this is just my perspective, I don't know how many people are able to discern that voice, right? I work a lot with, trauma and kids and even adults who have lived in trauma. And sometimes it's hard for them to discern what is my trauma speaking, my self-preservation speaking, and what is really my guidance, my gut, my saying, hey, do this, take this step towards healing. And so there's that constant battle. It's like, I need to self-preserve. I need to not allow more harm to come to me. But in doing that, I'm also not allowing the other voices that are allowing me, pushing me forward, or telling me to rest, or giving me the kind of guidance I need to have towards that healing. And so it's sometimes really difficult, and it's complex, and like we started off talking, it's very complex. That for a lot of people, you are in that self-preserving mode, or you're in that mode I like to call society, that vacuum of society telling you all the things that you should be doing now, and the timelines, and by 20 you should be, and 18 you should be, and all of that kind of stuff. And so it's really hard, I think, especially in modern society, to really listen deeply and get in tune with that you call it a Holy Spirit or whatever, that divine power, whatever it is that guides and is guiding and informing your existence. I think we have a lot of noise in society now that really is blocking. And so rest is a big thing for me. Like you talked about, there's like that moment when you're able to sit every day and just listen. What am I being guided to next? What am I being asked to do right now?
Brother, I'm gonna jump in, because you mentioned, again, you as a school psychologist, you very much hit it on the head, where the voices get confusing. You get conflicting messages. Is it my trauma talking, or is this, in my perspective, the Holy Spirit, or whatever your divine perspective is, or is it that thing talking? Is it a trauma, or is it that divine guiding light this talking? And I think it goes back to the notion of, again, I think we have to get ourselves in a place in which we can understand and recognize that voice, right? It's kind of like growing up with your mother. Your mother's voice. It could be a crowd. Like when I played football in high school, it could be a loaded stadium or whatever. I could hear my mother screaming in the middle of the game, and I knew my mother's voice. I could hear it and point to where she's sitting without even looking up, because I knew my mother's voice, right? Whereas, to your point, whether it's your trauma speaking or whether it's that divine presence inside of you speaking, can you delineate the difference between the two? Because the thing is, and like you mentioned, it's noisy. Like, our lives are so noisy. We got technology and entertainment and other people and stuff. And then we got all the stuff going on in our head. Just naturally, what voices are we listening to? And if we can't delineate and we can't decipher which one is that guiding light that we need to actually pay attention to, we're going to get distracted, and we will get bad information. And so I think to your point, and I think this is interesting, even going a step further, you being a school psychologist and, you know, understanding the importance of therapy, the importance of counseling, and then, you know, you mentioned, you know, the circumstances, you know, with your father, you know, committing suicide, you know, September is Suicide Prevention Month, right? So the whole notion of, if I had these voices in my head going on and I don't know how to delineate which one I need to listen to, I might be guided down the wrong path. And so therefore, therapy, counseling, advising, but definitely therapy and counseling is extremely important.
Yeah, for sure. I'm a big proponent of counseling and therapy. And I also recognize that there is some inequity around access to that as well, right? And to me, you know, I always say I would love to be out of a job. I want to work myself out of a job. And I think for me, the reason I have a job and I am kept very busy, for me, it comes right back to that community, right? It's because we've lost that knowledge or that information that we belong to one another, and we need to care for each other. So, you know, I didn't go to counseling right away after, like, oh, my dad died. There was no such thing. And my mom died. Didn't. But what kept and preserved and was able to help me go forward with the people, right? The people who weren't trained in counseling. And they said some off-color things, and you're like, oh boy. But they always were like, you know, we're gonna preserve you. We're gonna hold you up. We're gonna push forward with you. And so I think it is important. Yes, therapy. Yes, counseling. For me, I'm always intrigued and thinking about how can we get back to a model of community that supports all its members, to really not just handle your basic like food and shelter, yes, those things, but also care and safety, and you know, how do we use community to heal from trauma? Where do we, and when and how do we get back to that space where the community is a tool for healing? And that's kind of where I'm in a space right now. My next journey forward is continuing to build on that. Like, how can the community be used as a tool for healing in a real meaningful way, you know?
As a tool for healing. Like, man, that's, I mean, it's powerful, right? And ultimately, I mean, it's interesting, and through the lens of where we live in the United States and in Western society in general, you know, a lot of the root causes that individuals, or a lot of root causes that are attributed to society's ills come back to the breakdown of the family. According to Western society and according to the US society, the breakdown of the family is basically the core nucleus, but they're thinking about it through the lens of the nuclear family. You're talking about community, which is the nuclear family and the other extended family, neighbors, friends, family friends. It's like this more holistic view of family as opposed to just the mom, dad, and kids. And so to your point, maybe it's not just the breakdown of the nuclear family, it's more the breakdown of this community family that is the real crux to a lot of the woes that we see in society. Because truthfully, mom and like my wife and I, just like your wife and yourself, we have 2 kids, right? And truth be told, we need help at times. We can't do this by ourselves. So mom and dad are not necessarily equipped to do this whole thing by themselves anyway, right? We're supposed to have support. So we got grandparents come in town and neighbors and family friends and cousins and aunts and sisters and brothers. And we have all of that actually comes to help us, and we go and help them at times because it's not, it's not the nuclear family per se. It's this whole community family, which the nuclear family is a part of.
Yeah. And the thing is, if you look generations and generations back, the parenting was never, ever an isolating experience. The role of parenting was held by the community. It was never by just a mom and a dad. That child was our child. It's the community's child. It was not just these two individuals, because that child was central to the community, and they had a role and a purpose, and they understood how that one child, affected the wider community. It wasn't just single to mother and father. And I think that's where we need to expand, even how we think about who is responsible for child rearing. Because in truth and in fact, yes, parents are, initially responsible for some of those early, taking care of food and socializing, but parents don't live in a bubble, right?
That's right.
So employers, let's talk about how they also impact mother and father's ability to parent. All right. What is your role and responsibility as an employer to support them so they can be the best parents that they can be? Right? How do the other social systems operate to support parents so that they can be the best that they can be? And that's kind of what I'm seeing, because a lot of times we deal in this society about blame. It's like, oh, well, there we go again. Those parents, they don't. But parents need support. Parents, again, are very complex beings with their own histories. So they should not be doing this. You're right. My wife and I, we parent here because, both my parents are deceased and her parents are in Michigan. We're in Tennessee. And it is hard. And we are, two people with college degrees and, fairly good. It is hard. And so how do we begin to appreciate that teachers are also responsible for child rearing? All right. Employers, doctors, how all of us within the community.
We're all pieces to the puzzle.
All pieces to the puzzle. So, any kid that comes to me, I don't just see them as, oh, well, you're another client number, blah, 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 blah. No, I'm invested in you as a child of this community who has a role. And sometimes, coming back to faith and being able to see things even though it's not in front of you. When we see a child in their current circumstance that, they might be acting out or doing whatever it is, we tend to label them or say, oh, this is a bad kid, or, this kid needs, to be suspended or whatever it is. But that child has a purpose, right? That child has a bigger purpose that we may not necessarily see in our present state and in the present moment of what that child's purpose is and how that purpose impacts the wider society. And if we keep just looking at the current circumstance, their current behaviors and what we're seeing with our eyes, we may not be able to tap in and tune in to what it is this child is meant to be for our community. Who is this child meant to be for this community? And that really means suspending a little bit of ego as well. Not taking everything that child says and does personally, but understanding it like, hey, you also have a purpose here for this community. And, you may not know it yet. I may not know it yet. But what does it look like for us to take that journey together? And it may not necessarily be me. Is there someone else who can be that person to take that journey with you to self-discovery, rather than pushing that child out and kicking them out of school and isolating them and labeling them, It's coming back to that idea. It's like, if I could understand and appreciate that I have a purpose here, then I can appreciate that brother, that sister, that boy, that girl. They also have a purpose, regardless of what their present behaviors are showing to me. They have a purpose. How do we tap into that, and how do we help them recognize that in service to the wider community? And let's expand community to the world, right?
That's it. And so community is just, literally community, we're just talking about people, right? Yeah. We're talking about collections of people. Like, it's not, I don't mean a neighborhood per se, or a country, or an island, or a racial group, or whatever. I'm just saying community is just collections of people. Right? Because we're a part of this whole human community, right? In which we're supposed to serve each other. We're supposed to help each other. Like, I'm supposed to find joy in your success, and hopefully you find joy in my success, and we help each other to achieve that level of success and elevate it, enhance it, create synergy by connecting on it. I think that's extremely important. And you asked the question on how do we help that kid to understand their purpose? How do we help that kid to understand their value to not just themselves or themselves, but to the wider community, to humanity? And I think part of that is, again, being patient with them, one, but then, like you mentioned, the whole statement of those who decided to take a chance on me. I think in a lot of instances, it's as simple as we have to find opportunities to take chances on people.
Mm-hmm.
We have to find opportunities to invest in people, to
Mm-hmm.
believe that they're capable to, you know what, even if they fail, look, I'm gonna roll the dice and, give you a shot, man, because you deserve it. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're here. That's why you deserve it. And I'm
That's
gonna give
right.
you a shot. Now, if you fail, you fail, right? It's okay. Nothing wrong with that. We all fail at something. But the reality is, those who decided to take a chance on me, to me, still reigns as a theme of our conversation. And I think, truthfully, that's the solution to what it is, to the question that you posed, right? Mm-hmm. We have to learn and find ways to take chances on people, right? Mm-hmm. And then coach and inspire them through, the challenges.
Yeah.
But we have to give people opportunities,
yes.
right? We have to.
Absolutely, 100. Yes.
And so in your story, you went back, you worked in Trinidad, and then you went to grad school up in Rochester, New York, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's right.
And then you came back to Trinidad after that. So it's like, you could never escape Trinidad. Like you Trinidad through and through, man. That's, bacon shark and doubles and all
roti and the whole works,
roti, man. The bus up, come on.
What we say in Trinidad, that's where my navel string is tied, man. It's like I can't leave here. No matter where I go in the world, that's where my navel string is, man. I'm rooted there.
Rooted.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, the thing is, I had to go back to Trinidad after grad school because I got a government scholarship to do grad school.
Okay.
So I kind of had to go back, indebted to them. But, I got back there and they didn't have any jobs for me. Again, as a school psychologist, there was only one other in the island when I first started.
Wow.
All right. One other person. They were in private practice. And so it was just like, I love my country. I love the island, but you get back and it's like, okay, you just paid thousands of dollars to send this guy off to grad school.
And now you have nothing for him to do.
And now I come back and you got nothing. They're like deuces. So, so I opened up private practice and I, worked as a consultant and just, working with different schools in the area.
Hold on, pause. You just said something. Hold on. Were you the second school psychologist on the island of Trinidad?
Yeah. When I got back there are a whole lot more now, but yeah.
No. But again, see, you start thinking about history.
Yeah.
So ladies and gentlemen, you are now speaking to Lyndon Mitchell. He was the second school psychologist on the island of Trinidad and Tobago. History.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. At the time, yeah, for sure. And yeah, so I opened a private practice and through that, I actually started doing some consulting work with the government. Funny, charging them to do stuff that they sent me to do.
Hey, anyway. Look, no, check this out. Had they given you a job when you got back, you wouldn't have had to charge them. But look, hey, it is what it is.
It is what it is. And so, yeah, I started doing some consulting work. And, it's through that I actually was able to meet my wife. Who was recruited to come down with a team of other researchers to look into starting up inclusive education in Trinidad, because we didn't have a great special education program. So what would it look like to have an inclusive education system in Trinidad and Tobago? And so my wife was part of that team that came down, focusing on deaf. Her specialty is working with deaf students. And so I was a coordinator for that project. And, as I said, the rest is history. We worked together and then it was like, wait a minute, what's up?
And that's what's up. And then, so in that, and you all started dating, got connected, and then ultimately you all got together and you moved to the US, correct?
Moved to the US, moved here to Tennessee because she had her job here at UT when she was teaching. And so, yeah, we moved up here and been living here since 2009. Yes, that's right, 2009.
Yeah, 2009, and you got 2 babies and wife and US and all of that. But then, like I mentioned, I kind of teased it earlier, you all are actually about to go off on another adventure. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So my wife is kind of brilliant and she's kind of a big deal in her field of deaf education. And so she was awarded a Fulbright award to do some teaching and professional development and research down in South Africa, Johannesburg, South Africa, beginning this year. So we should have been
Sometime
there
this
already.
year. Yeah.
Should have been there, but there's been a little bit of a delay with the visa processing. But yeah, so we are going to be going to South Africa soon for the next 10 months for her to do her thing. And I'm looking forward for the kids to be able to, you know, have that experience of education in a whole different continent and a different way of, you know, learning. And yeah. So I'm excited for this next step.
Man, it's gonna be fun, man. Like I'm looking forward to hearing about everything and the journeys. And then I'm also interested, because of your unique background and story and all of these different, this collection of experiences that you've had, how all of those tap into what it is you're going to do while you're in South Africa as well, being able to see culturally a different place, but then tapping into, in comparison to Trinidad, to Jamaica, to the US, to, you know, and just kind of seeing the different nuances and how they all come together, but then also seeing the similarities, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm fascinated to do a follow-up and see how all these things come together and really reshape or to further shape, you know, your perspectives.
Yeah. I'm excited about it. You know, I keep telling people, like, this is my sabbatical year to really be quiet a little bit, you know, and get out of the do. It is really my time to, you know, I like what you said earlier, where I think I'm being called to rest for a little bit. And rest doesn't mean doing nothing. Rest meaning being quiet and stop the doing and practice being, right? And so just listening and being, you know, learning from people who are much wiser than me, learning from different people, cultures. And I'm particularly interested in getting into like the schools over there to kind of just see how they do education. You know, South Africa has that history there too, that I am like, woo, I wanna really immerse myself to see, you know, how have they dealt with intentionally, you know, their history and their own, you know, collective trauma in that country. And what does it look like now? How does it impact, you know, individuals? So I'm excited about this next experience, this next step too in learning. And I think it's really going to guide and shape what I do next. I have some ideas up my sleeve of what my next steps might want to be once we get back. But yeah.
Well, this is going to be awesome, brother. And, you know, man, first and foremost, man, I want to say thank you for sharing. Like, I believe that there were gems embedded in your story or along the way on your journey that will help someone who's currently listening to this to find a way to be encouraged, to be empowered, but then to also take action and enhance, you know, their quality of life and in the quality of life of those that they touch that are a part of their greater community. So I want to say thank you, my man, for sharing, man. And thank you for being open and, you know, and we wish you all the best as you go forward to South Africa. Make sure to shoot me some pictures. I want to stay abreast of what's cracking. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, for sure, man.
Absolutely. And is there anything that you like to leave us with, man, before we shut this thing down?
No, I mean, hey, Mike, I just want to thank you, man, for having this forum and this platform. I think it's so necessary for us brothers to have these kinds of conversations, right? To craft and construct our narratives and our stories, deconstruct some of the old things that we've been told, but and really start building this new vision, remembering who we are and what it is our destiny is tied to, and really just beginning to build community. And that's kind of what I see you doing here by having this podcast. It's building community. And it's not bound by any geographic location. You could be anywhere in the world and just tuning in and I'm you know, I hope that, you know, what we shared in our conversation today inspired some people, because to be quite honest, a lot of my own beliefs and where I am now was crafted and shaped by others, people who held similar beliefs before me too, right? So nothing that I spouted here was like all original Lyndon musings. You know, I pulled from different places, and it's like, wow, this sits with me, and this also, not just that it sits with me, but it also reflects my own life journey too, like some of my beliefs that I have to this point. So yeah, I hope, you know, somebody somewhere was inspired and they're like, whoa.
And I guarantee you they were. And the thing is, the information and the knowledge is generic, but the delivery, the context, and the perspective is very much unique. Mm-hmm. So I thank you for that, man, because again, the way that it filtered through you to the audience, man, I couldn't ask for anything more. So awesome, man, much success to you and the fam. Safe travels, my brother. And fellas, ladies listening too, as always, follow Black Fathers Now on all social media outlets. Share this thing out. If you got something from this, leave it in the comments, man. I'd love to get your take, get your thoughts on, Lyndon Mitchell's story coming from Trinidad and Tobago, eating the bus up, eating the bus up, the bacon shark, Now, question before we go, bacon shark. Now, is bacon shark the touristy thing, or is bacon shark something that you all ate like growing up?
All right. It is kind of the touristy thing. All right. So, but it's also the thing you do, like if you go to the beach on a Sunday, you have your little hut set up, and you have to have a bacon shark when you go to the beach, right? You don't leave the beach without a bacon shark. But it's not something that is typically cooked in your household.
Like, does your grandma cook bacon shark in the crib?
Nah, she might make some bacon cheese, but
gotcha.
Shark. It's special occasions. You go to a party, they may have some, bacon shark there. But it's a beach thing too. It's synonymous. You go to the beach, you grab
get a bacon shark. Okay.
Yeah, and you have to put everything on it. Don't just you have to
all
put
the chutneys and
everything. The tamarind sauce, the mustard, everything on it, man. Woo.
Okay, bacon shark with everything. So, ladies and gentlemen, the next time that you visit Trinidad and Tobago, courtesy of Lyndon Mitchell, make sure you get a bacon shark with everything on it. Everything on it, everything on it. I don't have an accent, but either way, I want to sound cool. But anyway, hey, until next time, y'all be blessed, well, and wise, and I'll holler at you. Peace. Yo, fellas, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And always visit blackfathersnow.com, as well as follow Black Fathers Now on virtually every social media platform you can think of. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere. Just follow us and engage with us, man. Look forward to hearing from you. And I guess until next time, I'll holler at you. Peace.